My fiancée left me for my brother on our wedding day, with my parents' full support. Now, she sought help against her husband's controlling behavior.
It's a strange thing, memory.
Sometimes it's a crystal clear film you can replay frame by frame, and other times it's like looking through water, the details distorted and shimmering.
But my wedding day?
That's crystal. I can feel the starched collar of my tuxedo digging into my neck, the almost imperceptible tremor in my hands that I was trying to still by clenching and unclenching them in my pockets. I remember the scent of the white roses and lilies that lined the aisle, a scent I can no longer tolerate.
It smells like betrayal.
I was standing at the altar, looking out at the sea of faces, friends, family, people who had watched me grow up. They were all smiling, waiting for Clara. My Clara. The woman I had spent the last 3 years building a future for. I wasn't just building a life with her, I was building a life for her. Every extra hour at the firm, every weekend spent poring over architectural plans for the house we were building from the ground up, every sacrifice was a brick in the foundation of our forever. My brother, Liam, was my best man. He stood beside me, a hand on my shoulder, whispering some joke to ease my nerves. He had that easy charm, the kind that made people forgive his transgressions almost before he committed them. He was the golden child, the sun around which my family orbited. I was the moon, steady, reliable, but always in his shadow.
I didn't mind.
Or so I told myself. Liam was my brother, and I loved him. And he was going to stand by me on the most important day of my life. The music swelled, the grand organ filling the cavernous church. This was it. The doors at the back of the church opened.
But it wasn't Clara.
It was her maid of honor, her face pale and streaked with mascara.
She was holding a single cream-colored envelope.
My heart didn't drop, it just stopped, a sudden, dead halt in my chest.
The world went silent. She walked the entire length of that long, silent aisle and handed the note to me.
My fingers felt like sausages, clumsy and useless, as I fumbled with the seal.
The note wasn't long.
Her handwriting, usually so elegant and flowing, was a jagged scrawl.
I can't do this. I'm sorry. I love him. I'm with Liam. That was it.
I read it once, twice, a third time. The words wouldn't make sense. It was like trying to read a foreign language. I looked up at Liam, my best man, my brother.
But he wasn't there. His spot beside me was empty.
The weight of his hand on my shoulder was just a phantom memory. The murmuring in the crowd started, a low buzz that grew into a wave of confusion and pity. My father came to the altar, his face a mask of stern disappointment.
My mother was already weeping into a handkerchief.
"Son," my father said, his voice low but carrying in the dead air.
"We need to go. Tell the guests." I just stared at him, holding the note out. "What is this? Dad? What is this?"
My mother came over, her eyes red-rimmed but strangely resolute.
"Alex, honey," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "Sometimes love is unexpected. It's a fire. You and Clara, you had a comfortable warmth. A friendship. But she and Liam, it's a wildfire. You can't stop a thing like that."
I felt the floor tilt beneath me.
A wildfire?
They were burning my life to the ground and calling it a wildfire. The drive to my parents' house was a blur. I sat in the back of the car, the tuxedo now feeling like a straitjacket. I kept seeing flashes, Clara and I picking out the ring, her tears of joy. Liam helping us move boxes into our new house, laughing as he pretended to struggle with a light one.
Was it all a lie? Every moment?
At the house, the truth came out, not in a torrent, but in a series of calculated, devastating blows.
My parents sat me down in the living room, the same room where we'd celebrated Christmases and birthdays.
They explained it to me as if I were a child who didn't get his way.
They had known.
They had known for months. Liam and Clara had come to them, confessed their undeniable connection.
My parents hadn't condemned them. They had counseled them.
They had decided that this was for the best. Alex, you're stable, my father said, his hands steepled. You're a provider. You gave Clara a sense of security she needed at the time. But Liam. Liam gives her passion. He makes her feel alive. My mother nodded, dabbing her eyes. We saw how she looked at him. We couldn't stand in the way of true happiness, even if it was difficult. They had helped them pack. They had given them money for a honeymoon, a trip to escape the fallout. They had chosen my brother's fleeting passion over my lifelong devotion. They chose the wildfire, and they were happy to let me be the kindling. I didn't shout. I didn't scream. I felt a strange and terrifying calm settle over me. I stood up, looked at the two people who were supposed to love me unconditionally, and I saw strangers. I saw people who had weighed their two sons and found one wanting. The house, I said, my voice hoarse. The house I built. I assume they'll be living there. My father had the decency to look away. It's practical, Alex. It's already furnished. They need a place to start. That was the moment something inside me broke, and something new, something harder, began to form in its place. I walked out of that house and never went back. The next few months were hell. I had to call every guest, cancel every vendor, and endure the endless, pitying whispers. I sold the house. I let them have the furniture, the appliances, everything. I wanted no trace of that life. I took the money from the sale, which was substantial, and instead of finding a new place to live, I rented a small, sterile apartment and poured everything else into my work. I left the big architectural firm and started my own. It was a massive risk. I worked 18-hour days, fueled by coffee and a cold, burning rage. The rage was a better motivator than happiness ever was. While they were off on their parent-funded honeymoon, I was building an empire from the ashes of my life. My company, Phoenix Designs, was aptly named. We specialized in sustainable, innovative architecture. I didn't just want to build buildings. I wanted to change the way people lived in them. My pain became my art, my betrayal became my blueprint. Years passed. 4 of them, to be exact. I heard whispers through the grapevine. Liam and Clara had returned. They threw lavish parties in my old house. Liam, who had never held a steady job in his life, had apparently become a day trader or an investment consultant, something vague that allowed him to maintain a lifestyle of leisure. My parents gushed about his success to anyone who would listen. I, on the other hand, was a ghost to them. My own success was an inconvenient footnote, a testament to the son they had discarded. Phoenix Designs became a leader in the industry. We won awards. I was featured in magazines. I had built a new life, a new family of friends and colleagues who valued me for who I was, not what I could provide. I even started dating again. I met a woman, Sarah, a landscape architect we collaborated with on a project. She was brilliant, funny, and she saw the man I was now, not the wreckage I had been. She knew my story, and she never treated me like I was fragile. She treated me like a survivor. Life was good. It was peaceful. And then, the past came knocking. It was a Tuesday afternoon. My assistant buzzed me. There's a Clara here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment. My blood ran cold. I hadn't seen her face in 4 years, except for in the occasional nightmare. I told my assistant to send her in. I needed to see what this was about. The woman who walked into my office was a shadow of the girl I was supposed to marry. Her vibrant energy was gone, replaced by a nervous, haunted look. Her clothes, though expensive, looked worn, and there were dark circles under her eyes that no amount of concealer could hide. She sat down, wringing her hands, and the dam broke. She told me a story, a long, rambling tale of how Liam had changed. The charming, passionate man was gone, replaced by a monster. He was controlling, she said. He monitored her calls, her spending. He kept her isolated from her friends. He was jealous, possessive. The wildfire had become a cage. She wept, telling me she had made a terrible mistake, that she was scared. She said she had nowhere else to turn. My parents, she claimed, were no help. They were so invested in the idea of Liam's success that they refused to see the truth. They told her she was being dramatic, that this was just how passionate men were. She needed help. She needed me. The old Alex, the reliable, steady provider, would have felt a pang of pity. He would have wanted to save her. But he was long gone. The man sitting behind the desk was a different person, one forged in fire. Still, a part of me, a small, foolish part, felt a sliver of something. Not love, but responsibility. This was a mess I was indirectly a part of. "What do you want from me, Clara?" I asked, my voice even. "I don't know," she sobbed. "A lawyer? Money to get away? A place to stay for a little while until I can get on my feet?" I told her I would think about it. I gave her the number of a good divorce lawyer and a domestic abuse shelter, telling her they were better equipped to help than I was. I felt a cold satisfaction in being the bigger person, the one who could still offer a hand even after being so thoroughly burned. Sarah was not impressed. "Alex, be careful," she warned me that night. "A woman who can leave a man at the altar for his brother is capable of anything. This might not be what it seems." I assured her I was being cautious, but her words planted a seed of doubt. Clara's story was compelling, but there were inconsistencies. She spoke of being financially cut off, yet she wore a designer handbag. She talked about isolation, but mentioned a recent lunch with a friend. My curiosity, the architects need to see the full blueprint, got the better of me. I hired a private investigator. Not to spy on her, I told myself, but to verify her story so I could offer the right kind of help. What he found was not a story of abuse, but a story of catastrophic failure. The investigator's report landed on my desk a week later, and it was a novel of deceit. Liam's day trading career was a complete fabrication. He had lost a fortune chasing high-risk stocks and cryptocurrency fads. The lavish parties, the fancy cars, the designer clothes, it was all a house of cards, funded by a series of massive loans. And that's when the first twist came. The loans weren't just from banks. The largest one, the one that had kept them afloat for the last 2 years, was secured against my parents' house. They had remortgaged their home, their retirement, to fund Liam's fantasy life. But that wasn't the biggest shock. The investigator had dug deeper into their finances, trying to figure out where their initial seed money had come from. And he found it. It was from the sale of an old commercial property, a small workshop that had been in my mother's family for generations. I remembered it well. My grandfather, a master carpenter, had left it to me in his will. He had taught me how to work with wood there as a boy. He said he was leaving it to me because I had the patience and the hands of a builder, unlike Liam. I had been told years ago, before the wedding, that the property had been sold to pay for my father's unexpected medical bills. I had never questioned it. I was happy to help, of course. My father's health was paramount. But according to the investigator, my father had never had any major medical procedures. There were no bills. The property was sold just 3 months before my wedding. The proceeds, a very significant sum, had been transferred into a joint account in the names of Liam and my parents. This was the money that had launched their new life. It wasn't just that they had supported my brother's decision to run away with my fiancée. They had stolen from me. They had stolen my inheritance, a gift from my grandfather, to bankroll the betrayal. The story Clara had told me was a lie, but it was also a perverted kind of truth. Liam probably was controlling and angry. Not because he was a jealous lover, but because he was a failed man staring into the abyss of financial ruin. The money was gone. The creditors were closing in. Clara hadn't come to me because she was a victim of domestic abuse. She had come to me because she was a passenger on a sinking ship, and she was looking for a new lifeboat. She was a rat. They all were. The second plot twist was even more sickening. The investigator, being thorough, had also pulled phone records from around the time she contacted me.
There were dozens of calls and texts. Not just between her and Liam, but between her, Liam, and my parents. They weren't fighting. They were planning. It was a coordinated effort. A Hail Mary pass.
Clara was their scout, sent into enemy territory to gauge my reaction, to see if the good, reliable Alex was still in there somewhere, ready to be manipulated again. Her story of abuse was the bait, a carefully crafted narrative designed to prey on my decency.
If I took her in, they could use it as leverage.
Maybe they could concoct a story of me breaking up their marriage, sue for emotional distress, or simply use my resources to pay off their debts. It was a scheme so audacious, so utterly vile, that I almost had to admire the sheer depravity of it. Armed with this knowledge, I arranged a meeting.
I didn't tell them what it was about.
I just told my parents I had some important family financial matters to discuss, and that it was imperative that Liam and Clara be there as well. I chose the venue carefully, the conference room at my office.
My turf. My kingdom.
They walked in, a united front of vipers. My father, looking stern and important. My mother, clutching her purse, her face a mask of worried piety. And Liam and Clara, standing close together, trying to project an image of a couple under siege.
Liam tried to take control immediately, his charm oozing like oil. Alex, good to see you, man. Look, whatever Clara told you, it's a misunderstanding. We've been under a lot of stress. I let him talk. I let them all talk.
I sat at the head of the long, polished table and just listened, my face unreadable.
Clara started to cry on cue, talking about how confused she was.
My parents started in with their usual rhetoric about forgiveness and family. Finally, when they had all run out of steam, I spoke.
I didn't raise my voice.
I simply slid 4 folders across the table.
One for each of them. I believe you'll find these interesting, I said.
I watched their faces as they opened them. The color drained from my father's face as he saw the bank statements, the loan agreements against his house. My mother let out a small gasp as she saw the documents detailing the sale of my grandfather's workshop and the subsequent money trail.
Liam's charming smirk dissolved into a slack-jawed panic as he saw the breakdown of his catastrophic trading losses. And Clara.
She stared at the printouts of her texts with my parents and Liam, the ones where they coached her on what to say to me, how to play the victim. The silence in the room was absolute, broken only by my mother's quiet, horrified sobs. "You didn't just let it happen," I said, my voice as cold and hard as the glass walls of the room.
"You orchestrated it. You stole from me to fund it. My grandfather's legacy.
You cashed it in and handed it to him, to them, so they could play house in the life I built."
I looked at Clara. And you. You weren't running from a monster. You were running from a balance sheet. The money ran out, so you came running back to the bank. But the bank is closed. Liam finally found his voice, a pathetic, blustering defense. You don't understand. I was going to pay it all back. I had a system.
Your system was to steal from your own blood and then send your wife to lie to my face when your scheme fell apart, I retorted, cutting him off. And that's when the final, pathetic truth came out, not from them, but from my own realization as I looked at their broken faces. This was never about a grand, passionate love.
It wasn't a wildfire. It was a business transaction.
Clara had weighed her options. She saw me, the slow, steady earner, and then she saw Liam, armed with what she thought was a magic pot of gold, my inheritance. She and my family made a calculated investment. They bet on the charming, fast-talking brother, believing he could turn that money into a fortune, a life of effortless luxury they all felt they deserved. They didn't see me as a son or a fiancé, they saw me as the seed capital for their real ambitions.
Clara didn't leave me for my brother.
She left me for a get-rich-quick scheme that had my brother's face on it. Her coming to me for help wasn't her leaving him, it was the next phase of the grift.
I stood up. The meeting was over.
"I'm not going to sue you," I said, and a flicker of hope appeared in their eyes. I'm not going to press charges for fraud. Doing so would mean I still consider you a part of my life, and I don't. From this moment on, you are nothing to me. The loan on your house is your problem. The creditors are your problem. You have made your bed, the one you financed with my past. Now you can lie in it. I turned and walked to the door. My mother cried out my name. Alex, please. We're your family. I paused at the door but didn't turn around. No, I said, the word hanging in the air. You're the people I used to be related to. And I walked out. I walked out of that room and into the evening sun. I felt light. The rage that had fueled me for 4 years was gone, replaced by a profound and peaceful emptiness. The ghost of the man I was on my wedding day was finally laid to rest. Sarah was waiting for me outside. She didn't ask what happened. She just took my hand, her grip warm and steady. It's over, she asked. I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time in a very long time, my future wasn't defined by my past. Yes, I said, and I squeezed her hand back. It's a new day. And we walked away, leaving the shadows and the schemers behind, stepping into the clean, clear light of a life I had truly built for myself. They had tried to burn me down, but they had forgotten one simple thing about fire. Sometimes, it doesn't just destroy. It forges.